Obviously, after a 6-month hiatus from the channel, I'm back with my first video, which is super exciting. For those that don't know, I've spent the last 6 months traveling through South and Central America. It was a little tricky trying to get a video up while I was traveling because hostels are very noisy and also the Wi-Fi tends to be a little bit on the shoddy side when you are backpacking, so I wasn't able to make any videos while I was gone, but now I'm in London and so here we are. As you may have noticed, this backdrop is not my bedroom. This is a B&B, and because of that there are a couple small disclaimers that I have to give you guys about the quality of this video. Firstly, I'm using natural lighting. Natural lighting is sunlight, which is not the most consistent, especially in London where it can be a little bit overcast at times. I also don't have my tripod, so currently my camera is balanced on a chair, which on top of I have put a side table. So you work with what you've got when you haven't got a lot. And the third disclaimer, I noticed that the lighting has just changed because the sun's gone behind the clouds. The third disclaimer is that my B&B is on a main road, so there is going to be traffic noise. Sorry guys.
Shall we begin?
I thought for my first video back I would jump on the bandwagon that every other YouTuber seems to be riding, and that is the Game of Thrones finale, which aired a couple of days ago. This isn't going to be a reaction video because I have already seen the episode, but I thought instead I would just chat generally about the characters and how their arcs ended up. Were they written well? How could they have been written better? And what I would have liked to have seen as the series finale. So more of just a general chit chat with you guys about Game of Thrones. So grab a cup of tea and let's do this. So because the episode starts with Tyrion, I thought that we could also start with Tyrion. He is one of my favourite characters in the show. I think he's one of the most well written, and he definitely has one of the curviest of all the arcs of all the characters. If we look at him from the beginning of the series, he was this outcast who was a drunk and spent most of his time and money with prostitutes, and by the end of the series he is this noble dude whose morals are worth more than his life. And how we see that is that he takes off the hand of the queen pin and throws that down because he no longer believes in what his queen is doing, knowing that that is ultimately going to be the end of his life. By the way, why are not more people talking about this moment? Because it was so badass. One of my favourite moments in the entire series. I also appreciate that they gave Tyrion the opportunity to say goodbye to Cersei and Jaime, which I think also fits within his character. Even though he did have a broken relationship with his siblings and his family, he did love them, so it was nice to see that the writers gave him a chance to grieve over their deaths. One of the things I don't like, which I think a lot of people will agree with, is the fact that he was so easily able to find them and just dig through the rubble to get to them, yet this is the same rubble that killed them. So if it was so easy for him to find them, why was it not easier for them not to die? Bad writing. A little bit of bad writing there. And by the end, Tyrion is Hand of the King. We'll talk about the whole king thing later as well, but a fitting ending to his character. He didn't love being Hand of the King or Queen. He made a lot of mistakes, but now he's got a chance to live his life the right way and redeem himself going forward for all the mistakes he made in the past. So Tyrion's storyline gets a tick from me. So the next thing I want to talk about wasn't actually in this episode but the one prior, and that is Jaime and his decision to go back to Cersei in her final moments. Again, quite a controversial moment for a lot of people. I actually support this decision. I just support where Jaime ended up, and I want to kind of go through why. So Jaime again had a great character arc. He started out as kind of the bad guy, and then by the end of it had joined the greater good to fight against the Night King. However, ultimately when he realizes that Cersei is likely to lose this war against Dany, he goes to be with her, either to try and save her or ultimately to meet his end alongside her. People are mad about this, And I understand why they are, because ultimately his decision to be with Cersei reverses all the good that he's done for two and a half, 3 seasons, however long it's been. But really it makes sense that Jaime made this decision. This is a dude that at his core is probably the good guy, but everything that he does in life he does for Cersei. He loves her more than anything. She is literally his world. And so if she ceases to exist, so does his world. So his choice to go and be with her in her final moments, or try and save her, but I think he knew that she was going to perish. There was no other way for Jaime to end up. It was brought into the world together, leave the world together. So I agree with the writer's decision to have Jaime make this decision, but I do appreciate people that don't agree with that. And so the next logical thing to talk about would be Cersei, because she also didn't die in this episode, it was the one prior. And again, people are upset with the way that she met her demise, feeling like maybe she deserved to kind of suffer longer. Again, I actually agree with the writers on this one. So if we look at this ending from a step-by-step standpoint, she is this arrogant woman. She's always believed that she knows better than anyone else, that she's smarter and wiser, and she begins the episode believing that she's going to defeat Dany's crew, and then as the episode progresses she loses more and more. So first of all, she loses her people. She thinks that they will fight for her to the end, and they don't. They surrender, so that's a blow. Here's her arrogance meter, and it's dropped just that little bit there. And then she watches her city crumble, so it drops a little bit further. She tries to make an escape, and the mountain finally, for the first time, disobeys her, so then it drops a little bit further again. And then she loses her hand of the queen and her advisor, and the last hope she has of really making it out of there alive. Obviously the mountain kills him, so then it's getting pretty low, this meter. Then she does a runner. She gets down to the crypts. Are they called the crypts? I don't know, and I think it's the crypts there as well. And she runs into Jaime. And now, for a moment, she probably has a little bit of hope. Maybe that meter's bumped up again, because Jaime has always been someone that's saved her or been there for her, or, you know, what have you. And more than anything, she wants not so much just herself to get out of the situation, but their unborn child to survive. And as we know from many episodes, the thing that Cersei loves most in the world, that she values most in the world, is her children. So this is the last big thing of importance to her now that she's lost her kingdom or queendom. And Jaime says to her, it doesn't matter, all that matters is us, and that solidifies their impending death. Not even Jaime can save their unborn child. How could it have been worse for her, really? I mean, she's had all of this hopelessness throughout the course of the day, and then is given this tiny little slither of hope in the form of Jaime, only to have even that taken away from her. So I think her ending is pretty fitting. And so I think Cersei, that gets a tick from me as well. The fall of Daenerys. Okay, lots to unpack here. So in the prior episode, we have this snap moment when Daenerys makes the decision to annihilate an entire city of innocent people to get back at Cersei, to take the kingdom over. A lot of people were unhappy with what they deemed this to be a very quick fall into the dark side. But really, if we look at her as a character from the beginning to that moment, to me it makes perfect sense. It all happened the way it should have. Right back in the beginning of the series, Daenerys quite happily watched somebody murder her brother by pouring molten gold on his head, and she didn't even blink an eyelid. She's always been the Mad Queen at heart. It's just she's hidden behind these acts of heroicism, which are really only acts that benefited her. So yes, she's freed slaves and burnt the slavers and things like that, but everything that she did furthered her quest to be a queen. So she never acted for the greater good just for the sake of it. Not only that, but she was so quick to murder people that didn't agree with her. So she's always been a loony. The snap moment, as I call it, is not out of nowhere either. If we look at the events that lead up to it, she loses the love of the people, she loses her dragons, her best friend, her advisors, and then finally John. She loses literally everything that she valued that got her into this queen status, and she has nothing left. And as she even says herself, if she can't rule with love, she's going to rule with fear. So her snap moment makes a lot of sense. Yes, it was probably a little too quick. I think they could have had one extra episode with her unruly hair, which I love that that was the symbol of her unraveling, was that her beautiful hair was a little bit unkempt. But maybe one more episode would have solidified that decision. But the decision itself, to me, I agree with. And then there's Jon's decision to murder Daenerys. This moment I agree with the outcome but not the execution. So ultimately Jon has always been somebody who acts in the best interest of the greater good, and after what Daenerys does, it would be hard for him not to believe that that act was for the greater good. Jon's decision to kill Daenerys probably would have been more justified had we had a glimpse of just how mad she was prepared to be. I don't think that just taking out the people of King's Landing was enough, even though it was truly horrific. That could have been seen as just a moment of weakness or a moment of insanity. If she had had a moment where she, for example, ordered Sansa to be executed after Sansa wouldn't bend the knee, or perhaps divulged a plan to go and take out people from another of the seven realms, seven kingdoms, seven realms. Anyway, then that might have made the whole Daenerys having to die moment feel like there was no other choice. However, her conversation with Jon right before he takes her out kind of reminded me of the old Daenerys, and it did make it harder to believe that he believed that it was the only way forward. So a little bit more time with Dany as the Mad Queen would have made this a better outcome. And finally, the fate of the Starks. Some which I agree with, some which I don't. You can probably guess which is which. Arya I'm happy with because there wasn't really another outcome for her, and it makes sense that she'd be seeking her next adventure. As she said herself, she was never going to be just someone's lady or some, you know, fancy pantsy person. So it makes sense to me that she would be going to discover what's west of Westeros. So I'm happy with her storyline and how it all panned out. She's one of the coolest characters of all time as well. So I'm really happy that she got ultimately a happy ending. Sansa, I'm glad she's a queen, at least there's that. But she should have been queen of everything, not queen of the North. She really deserved it a lot more than Bran. That's one of the decisions that I'm with the general public here. What is Bran doing being made king? Like, the dude is not even on the same planet anymore. Bran says something in one of the prior episodes, it might be the one before, that basically alludes to the fact that he spends most of his mental time living in like the past, like reliving history and not in the present. So the decision to make him king, no, it should have been Sansa. I stand by that one. Wacky. And finally, Jon's fate, which is a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. So the way I felt about what happened with Jon is similar to anyone that's seen The Departed, the Martin Scorsese film with Leonardo DiCaprio. No spoilers, just in case you haven't, or that movie is like decades old. But what happens to Billy Costigan made me feel the same way about what happens to Jon. Just the dude that always did the right thing, getting the roughest of the storylines by the end of it. Well, it's not that bad, I suppose, but I mean, I think he deserved to be able to live out his days happily alongside his sisters, but no, he gets banished. It's the best of both worlds, apparently. I kind of saw it coming because there is that moment with him and Tormund in the prior episode where Tormund says to him, "You've got the North in you," and so of course it kind of was foreshadowing what was going to happen. And I'm glad that he does have some mates up there that he can hang with. So it's not the worst outcome for him, but yeah, just a bit of a sad run for him that he didn't get the treatment he deserved by the people, but what are you gonna do? And so that's basically my feelings on the characters by the end of the episode. But what could have made the season slash series better? Couple of things. First and foremost, it needed to be longer. Way too much happened in such a short amount of time. It just was a weird call to have it a 6 episode season and not 10, or even to have a whole nother season, because really they could have had a season dedicated to killing the Night King and then one season that had a mixture of taking out Cersei and the end of Dany. It just was way too quick to have all of that in 6 episodes. The death of the Night King could have been better. The battle itself, other than being way too dark, was pretty good, but Arya killing the Night King out of nowhere felt unearned. I think how that could have been changed, how it could have been a lot better, would have been for them to devise a plan for her to take on the face of a walker and infiltrate the army of the Night King and then take him out from the inside. And then you could have had a whole moment of tension where it looks like maybe the other White Walkers have discovered that she's not one of them. That would have been a lot better than the way it all went down. I also saw someone else's theory. I don't remember who it was, so sorry to not credit you, but someone else that I watch on YouTube said it would have been cool for them to kill Bran as a sort of self-sacrifice and have her put on Bran's face and then trick the Night King into getting closer and then taking him out that way. Also would have been cool, Bran sacrificing his life for the greater good. So a couple of ways they could have improved the ultimate demise of the Night King, but certainly a lot more time needed to be spent working towards that plan. That was far too quick and too easy. Another big change, not having Bran end up as the king. That was dumb. I think we can all agree that was dumb. It should have been Sansa. But also I would have liked to have seen Jon be treated better, and also his lineage having more relevance, because by the end of it, it was like, okay, so he's a Targaryen and then just nothing. Like, we know it now, but it really, other than him being able to ride a dragon, it really didn't come to much by the end of it. So what could have been cool is if him and Arya went on their little adventure together to discover this new land, and perhaps he would have ended up starting the Targaryen family heritage again on the new land with somebody, I don't know, maybe a ship hand or something. But his ending could have been a bit nicer for him, but also have had more relevance to the Targaryen bloodline. So yeah, that one's a shame as well. And if Bran wasn't going to be king in my fixed and better version of Game of Thrones, then he could either have been the person that keeps all of the history written down, so he writes the book of Fire and Ice, Ice and Fire? Fire and Ice? Is that the Pat Benatar song? One of those two. Or otherwise he could have been Sansa's side man that helps her out with any future wars, because technically he can see into the future as well as the past. So he definitely would have had a place in my revised Game of Thrones lineup, and he would have had some value, but it wouldn't be king, because that is dumb. Yeah. And while I'm thinking of it, there is one other thing that I think they could have done better with Bran, is the whole three-eyed raven thing. Like, he barely used his skills as the three-eyed raven to do any good. I mean, he basically caused Hodor's death, so a dick move there. And he didn't really help the war against the Night King, or against Cersei, or against Dany. So, like, what was the point of him having those abilities in the first place? So yeah, that could have been done a lot better as well. But that's basically it from me for my thoughts on Game of Thrones. The finale, it's all over. As I said, this is unscripted, so I'm sorry if it was a bit jumbled all over the place. I was just saying things as they popped into my head, not always a good idea. Once I get back into doing my reviews, I'll make sure they're a bit more structured, but I just kind of wanted to get this one out there. I just want to talk to you guys about how I feel about the end of this huge era in our lives of Game of Thrones, and how sad I am actually that I don't have the show in my life anymore. There hasn't been another show that's really gripped me for quite a while now, so hopefully something comes along soon. But anyway, thanks as always for watching, guys. Thanks for joining me on my return to my channel. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully the next time I make a video I have a better setup and better lighting and a better mic and all the rest of it. And hopefully this one hasn't been too unwatchable. Until next time, guys, thanks as always for watching. I'll see you here for the next one. Goodbye!